Joining us now is Cole Stangler. Cole has been on the program before, as you may know. He is a staff writer for the International Business Times. He is one of our best reporters on the beat now of labor in the workplace. And Cole, we're glad to have you back.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, RJ. It's been a while.
Yep, it has, and you've been doing some good reporting. I want to catch up on a couple things with you on the labor and workplace front. And let's start with this. According to America's largest union organization, the AFL-CIO, they put out a report, which you covered, suggesting that the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the new treaty being promoted by President Obama and many Republicans, some Democrats, that the Trans-Pacific Partnership will not deliver on its promise to advance U.S. interests against China. Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
Right. So, I mean, by doing this, what the AFL is doing is trying to take on this argument we've been hearing a lot from the administration and some of the backers of the trade deal, which is basically that this is necessary in order to counterbalance China, because if we don't enter into this trade agreement, then we're going to let China set the quote-unquote rules for the region. So the deal is Australia, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, Vietnam, these big economies that if we don't do anything, if we don't sign this trade deal, China's going to rope them in and be able to exert its influence in the region. And so this paper was essentially trying to debunk that kind of argument. And essentially the report was saying that you can't really take those claims seriously, that they're not really substantiated. And it did so in basically two ways. One is that it said that the deal itself doesn't really have strong enough standards to begin with. So the deal is not actually going to raise standards substantially in a way that would be beneficial for American interests, which is, again, its own kind of loaded term. We can get to that later. But the second part is that China can also take advantage and benefit economically from the trade deal, despite not officially being a member of it. And that, So
how does the AFL-CIO say that would work? I understand the criticism that says the rules aren't strong enough, but how does the AFL-CIO report suggest that China could actually benefit from this deal?
So one of the things it talks about is the rules of origin, and that basically is a way for you have to have certain content produced in the countries to benefit from the preferential treatment afforded under the trade deal. And so what they're saying is that you could have a Chinese manufactured good where most of it's manufactured in China. Let's say then it goes to Malaysia. Let's say you're building a television, for instance, manufactured in China. You send it to Malaysia, make a few adjustments there. Then it gets exported to the U.S. And China is effectively, getting the benefits. Those companies are reaping the benefits of
because it identifies the rule, the place of origin as being Malaysia and not China.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting. So this report came out, I guess, a couple days ago. Has there been any response from the White House?
Not that I've seen. Not that I've heard of. I think maybe at this point they're probably accustomed to the kind of criticism they've been getting from the AFL-CIO and others. But I haven't heard of anything.
Okay, because you'd think, yes, they've been getting hammered over this deal, but if someone makes specific concrete charges, you'd think they might want to rebut. So who knows? Maybe they will at some point. And speaking of the Pacific Rim, let's pivot to Los Angeles. How did you like that segue, by the way?
That's a good one.
Okay. Now, in Los Angeles, the news of the week, which you wrote up, is that Los Angeles has approved an increase in the minimum wage to $15 by 2020, or in 5 years. Now, LA is the largest city to approve this increase. What are people saying about that? How is this getting received around the country? Are other cities planning to follow suit? And let me actually back up and start with this. It seems you point out that a $15 minimum raise was once considered an inconceivable demand. That's your word. That your phrasing, that low-wage worker protests helped usher into the political mainstream. What happened? How did a major United States city, how did this idea go from being kind of a fringe grassroots street idea, almost an Occupy type idea, to something that gets passed in one of our largest cities?
Right. I think one is, I think the people who, I think we ought to give credit to the people who were organizing this and pushing for this, because, like I said, it was pretty inconceivable when people were making this demand. And you actually have to go back to, you think about Seattle, where you had a socialist city council member, Shama Sawant, proposing this, and it was the $15 wage, I should say, and she wasn't taken all that seriously when she started, and you had a tremendous amount of organizing going into it, and ultimately was successful. And so I think there are a few things going on. One is you have the organizing that I think they've done a tremendous job of just promoting their cause, and I think that resonates when you have the kind of income stagnation, wage stagnation we've seen in the United States. So you need those conditions for it to happen. And I think when you have people pushing for a $15 minimum wage in a situation where we have such dramatic income stagnation, it really resonates with people. One is the organizing. The other part of this is I think, and we might see this more, is when people were opposing these minimum wage, these proposed wage increases, the argument, the refrain you'd hear all the time from business, you still hear it, is that it's going to force people to cut hours, lay off workers, the sky is falling, all that sort of stuff. And then as these wage increases have actually come into effect, people see that the impact really isn't that dramatic on employers. And sure, there have been reports of this, sporadic reports of businesses having to close. There's a few notable cases. Small business in San Francisco, a bookstore, and people like to point to those. But overall, in these cities that have done these wage increases, you really the sky isn't falling, and you're not seeing the kind of horrendous impacts that are being predicted by those in the business community and their lobbyists.
So lawmakers at the city level, maybe they're responding, number one, to the grassroots organizing, and maybe they're looking at the evidence and it's suggesting to them that this would be politically popular and not the economic catastrophe they've been told it would be. I guess that makes sense to me as an interpretation, and it's certainly, it's interesting that first of all, Fight for 15 has a kind of, I might give, this may sound silly, but I would give a fair amount of credit to just the catchiness of the phrase, the fact that Fight for 15 kind of resonates. It's got that internal, whatever you call it, where the same the same consonant appears twice. It just resonates. And secondly, 15 is, the president at one point was pushing for I think a $9 and something increase from the current $7.25, which in real terms is much less than it was in 1968 and so on. Mm-hmm. I think it just has a feeling of boldness or decisiveness about it that made it politically resonant. Maybe, that's my pet theory. You don't have to embrace it.
No, I think that's part of it too. And again, the other part, which you were mentioning before, is that I do think this actually will have an impact on ongoing debates. And the biggest one, obviously, being in New York, where New York City has notably lagged behind some of these other cities, progressive-minded cities also that have raised wages, because New York City is dependent on Albany, the state of New York, to allow it to move ahead. Because right now, cities and municipalities in New York State can't raise the wage on their own, so they need action from the state. And so I think, I think it's conceivable that this move in Los Angeles will maybe put some more pressure on lawmakers in Albany to
right, because I don't believe, if I recall correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong, I do not believe that Governor Andrew Cuomo has been an ally of Mayor Bill de Blasio of New York on this issue. I think, in fact, he's resisted him, but I could be wrong. That's my recollection.
It's a little complicated. So de Blasio has proposed basically a higher minimum wage than the one Cuomo has proposed, but Cuomo does officially have his own minimum wage proposal. It's a little bit lower than de Blasio's. The other aspect is when Cuomo was supposedly pressuring, I shouldn't say pressuring, when Cuomo was trumpeting minimum wage increase at the state level, he actually withdrew it during budget negotiations just a couple months ago. So it never happened then. So I mean, you could have a debate about how serious or sincere Cuomo's push was before. But he is officially backing a wage increase.
But not to 15.
Not to 15, no.